Hello. Welcome to Foregone Books, where I talk about the books I read. I talk about all the books I read. I think I do anyway. And as I read them, basically, sometimes there's a few that from the past, because I read a lot of books in the past. And sometimes I want to tell you about them, but then I'd have to go back and reread them. But sometimes I'll do that. And anyway, it's usually books I'm just reading as I go along and read them. And today's book is a biography. It's called Last Man Standing, Mort Sahl and the Birth of Modern Comedy by James Curtis. This is a book about stand-up comedy and politics about Mort Sahl. Now, Mort Sahl, I realize, is really a figure of the past. I first became aware of Mort Sahl probably in the 1960, around that time, when he would appear on Jack Parr's daytime or after evening show. Jack Parr, who started having the Tonight Show, or Steve Allen had the Tonight Show, then went to Jack Parr, and Jack Parr ultimately had a primetime show that I remember seeing quite a bit when I was young. And Jack Parr had all these really interesting people on. Like, that's where I first saw Jonathan Winters. That's where I saw Oscar Levant. That's where I saw probably Mort Sahl, as well as some other programs. So Mort Sahl was a unique stand-up comic, and the book makes a case for that he changed the face of stand-up comedy in that period. That was really, it was back in those days, it was a lot of old timers that came out of the Borscht Belt, the Catskills scene, nightclubs. They would wear tuxedos, these type of people like, Henny Youngman, Burns and Allen, they were TV stars and radio stars. Milton Berle, a lot of other people like that who were the old school stand-up people. Joey Lewis is another character like that. And unless he was just a singer, I'm not sure. Anyway, there's a movie about him with Frank Sinatra. So, Last Man Standing with this guy, he was kind of a critical. He started out being critical of the Eisenhower administration. He started very early, in early 50s, at a place called the Hungry Eye, which is a little club in San Francisco. He's from L.A., but he started really doing this work in this club in San Francisco, and it was written up by a columnist in San Francisco paper. And so then his career took off from there, and it all grew out of that. And this is like nightclub stuff. As the book goes on, the texture, the business of entertainment, of course, is tracked too, because when you read about an actor or a performer or a stand-up comic, like in this case, the book is going to tell you about their career and the ups and downs of their career. And what went on with this thing is that he started out in nightclubs. This was quite a scene, apparently, in the 50s and before, where people would go to elegant nightclubs, have a cover charge, have drinks, smoke a bunch of cigarettes, maybe eat something, and they would see an evening of entertainment, which would include a singer, maybe a couple of singers, and a stand-up comic. So they talk about the bills where, various of these people were booked on bills together. And, how the bill went would vary a lot as far as how the house went. If it was really stacked with three people who were all big draws, or two people, the singer and the comic, then the house would be full. So yeah, he started in the Hungry Eye and then progressed to all these other clubs and did a lot of TV. And he was contacted by Joseph Kennedy. Joseph Kennedy was the father of the Kennedy clan, Teddy and Bobby and Johnny. And when Johnny was running for president, he called up, Joseph Kennedy, the old man, was aware of Mort Sahl and contacted him to write some gags for his son, who was running for president. And the people do not write their own speeches. These politicians and so forth, they have people to do that for them, based on either what they think or I don't know what their handlers tell them to do. I don't know what's clearly what's going on right now in that situation in the White House particularly. But anyway, since the guy's so creakily old sometimes, he seems very old. Anyway, so what went on? Let's see. He went to New York. Oh, he wanted to get on television. He's this sort of, this kind of radical guy, this jokester about politics, which wasn't really done, I guess, since really Will Rogers, who died in the 30s in an airplane accident. So he was gone for forever when when Mort Sahl came up in the 50s. So, it talks about his life, and it talks about his friends, and it talks about his personality. And he was still alive when this book was written. It came out in 2017, and he didn't die until 2021 at age 94 years old, and he looks a little old in the photos of his old man. People look so weird when they're very old like that. They look kind of a little monstrous, actually. Do I look monstrous yet? Anyway, so he, it talks about the friends he made. He made some high-powered friends and helped certain people in business. He helped, Shelley Berman appears in the, Shelley Berman was another stand-up comic. And Shelley Berman was someone who, Mort Sahl also had the first comedy record in 1960 or something. So he was the first to produce comedy records. And there's been certain, LPs. There's been certain peaks and dives of the comedy world as far as recordings go. So in the around 1960, whatever it was, there was a rash of a bunch of comedy records that came out and were hits. So that was a run of hit comedy records, and Mort Sahl was the first one, followed by Shelley Berman did one that Mort encouraged him to do one. I don't know if you know Shelley Berman. He would do bits about on the phone. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Oh, really? You're telling me? No. Stuff like that. Only he had jokes. And Shelley they were always got along well. But he had a very, apparently a difficult personality, this Mort Sahl. I think he was an only child, for one thing. That always helps set up someone to be maybe a little more difficult than others. Well, it doesn't always, but sometimes it does. So he was an only child and growing up in L.A. His dad had sort of notions about being a writer. He wrote stories and put them in boxes, and ultimately he didn't, he just was a worker of some sort, and worked and took care of the family. So anyway, Mort Sahl wore sweaters when he performed, which is why I wore a sweater for my Mort Sahl book review. I should have bought a newspaper because he would come on stage with a newspaper rolled up and with the sweater on, which was also a new thing. It was this new casual thing. Like he would go to these clubs in New York, the Copacabana, the famous Copacabana, and it was having all these like high-end acts like Jimmy Durante, people like that who to work the clubs, and everybody would wear formal outfits, tuxes and so forth. But he performed in this other way, and so just did what he did. So he got on television some and did some of that, and it all kind of a pivotal point and something that really jarred him and jarred the whole country, and everything was not the same since, which I talked about before already, and that was when John F. Kennedy was assassinated in November of 1963, which was just 60 years ago. And the Warren Commission came after that, and it ended up that Mort Sahl became quite a critic of the Warren Commission, and was very into the truth coming out, as the Warren Commission was quite flawed and actually quite a lie about what all went on, and a cover-up because, well, CIA director, former CIA director that was fired by Kennedy was on the Warren Commission, Alan Dulles, which was, kind of like, what? Put him on the Warren Commission? At any rate, so he really dug in on the Warren Commission, and when he did get some TV shows, he would bring on Mark Lane, who wrote Rush to Judgment, one of the first critical books about the Warren Commission. So he would have Mark Lane on, and the whole show. He would have this evening show on like a local Metro Media station. I think it was the Metro Media then, in L.A., and just go on and on about the assassination. And I actually recently heard a recording from that show where he and Mark Lane interview Vicki Adams. I think Vicki Adams is her name. Yeah, Victoria Adams. Anyway, she was a woman who worked in the school book depository at the same time as Oswald when the assassination occurred, and she has testimony about seeing him in the lunchroom, on the second floor or whatever, while the assassination is going on. So he couldn't really have been the assassin, according to that testimony that she gave, and it was quite an interesting recording. It's on Guerrilla Radio or something. I'll put it in the notes if I remember what podcast I heard that on. It's on one about sort of radical things, and have a lot of Kennedy researchers on this particular show. So that kind of brought his career to a bit of a crash, because he got canceled from the TV show because too much talk about the Warren Commission, and he was kind of blackballed for a while. He thought it was a conspiracy to silence him for several years. He's like 12 maybe, while he was running on about the Warren Commission. Other factors that are going on at the same time is that the whole culture is changing out of this, this 50s nightclub scene. Youth coming up who wanted different things. All all the old clubs were turning into rock clubs, and the stand-up comedy and the nightclub thing was just falling apart. The nightclubs were closing, so his whole work thing changed a great deal. He went on tours, and theater tours, and he had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of hard time, a lot of like kind of not taking shit in a way. Like if he didn't like something, he would say something about it and burn his bridges, basically. And so that's that was also a factor of his life. How when you burn so many bridges, sometimes you can't get across. And I don't really understand how it all works. I don't understand our commercial culture. I don't understand the vastness of America or the world, and like how all entertainment works. I see. I live near Webster Hall, a ballroom rock venue near here in New York, where I've seen a lot of people, and I see bands that are touring that I never heard of course, and there's all this whole structure of this entertainment that goes on all over the place, and so many people that are into it. I can't, it's I know that I like certain things, and but it's like, really, a whole lot of people go for this, enough people that it makes it a viable commercial thing. It's the country is so deep and big and tolerates a lot of stuff, and even in the 50s, how odd the 50s might have been, or how you might think they were. There was I read a book by Chris Hedges called The Death of the Liberal Class, which I haven't talked about here yet, because I try to stay away from the political stuff, I guess, if I can, because it's like, what do I know? But anyway, in that book he talked about how liberals changed throughout the 50s. Actually the real change is all started with the blacklist, the Red Scare from right after the war into all through the 50s, and it's often called McCarthyism, but it wasn't just McCarthy, and actually he was a little late to the game, because it was the House Un-American Activities Committee that started it, like in 1946, 47, and started calling all these people communists and so on and so forth, and the studios said, okay, then we'll ask for loyalty oaths or whatever, fire all these people, and the culture all got kind of sanitized in that point, and people became afraid, and I think it really changed the texture of pop culture from then on, and even to today. And then the next real slam down came when the CIA murdered John F. Kennedy, and therefore gave the military state what it wanted, another war in Vietnam, and all the wars that have followed since. So it's all, it's kind of sad and tragic. But anyway, so Mort Sahl, he talks about his relationships with women. He married rather late. He had a long relationship with Yvonne Craig, and as a 50s, 60s kid, Yvonne Craig was really beautiful. A very attractive brunette. I think was she Catwoman or something? Was she on Batman or something? Anyway, she was in a lot of movies back in the day. I don't know if you know the name of Yvonne Craig, but they were together for a few years and never ultimately got married. But So yeah, he had a relationship with her, and other attractive women like Joan Collins he was with when he was in England, and he had a lot of affairs. So with these actresses, he liked actresses. He had married kind of young, and then that didn't work out, and they divorced. So then he married a little bit later. I think he was in his 40s by that time, to a Playboy bunny named China Lee. Her name is spelled just like China, the country, but it is pronounced China, according to the book. So she was China Lee. She was a Playboy bunny, Chinese, and she was like the first Chinese Playboy bunny or something, and also became, was like a kind of a dynamic personality and trained the other bunnies and stuff like that. So he ended up marrying her. They had a very difficult, tumultuous relationship. Like within the first year, she's filing for divorce like 5 times or something. Ultimately, they had a very entrenched kind of relationship where, he kind of needed a caretaker, which is not rare in these man-woman relationships where the women end up kind of having to deal with all the business. My mom dealt with the business in our family's house and so forth. So that was what it was. She was basically his manager, and took care of all the details. And ultimately, they had a kid when she was 34 and he was like 40 something, whatever, and a son who they named Mort Sahl Jr. And then near the final end of it, there's a chapter about what happened to young Mort, and what a bright kid he was, and went around with his dad a lot to a lot of things. And ultimately, his dad was very straight. Mort Sahl was not a pot smoker or an acid head or a druggie. He was not Lenny Bruce. He was a friend of Lenny Bruce. He was not Lenny Bruce. He was not that kind of a character at all. He was kind of straight-laced and actually very didn't like to work blue. Didn't like to say dirty words, or even in normal conversation. So he was very sort of proper in that way. He didn't like swearing, cussing, that kind of thing, which I understand. I'm not really that much of for that sort of thing myself. I think we should try to be a little more articulate if possible, which I try to do, although I do say the F word in many occasions. So yeah, so let's see, where was I? I saw Mort Sahl perform live once here in New York. It must have been like 20 years ago, maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, it was quite a thing to see Mort Sahl live, and not that I remember much about it because I was probably high. So that's life. Oh, so they get married and they have the kid. And then when they end up divorcing, of course, finally, after all these things, and maybe divorcing. She was, and also the money. I don't understand the money. They're hard up for money. He's running around doing these shows everywhere. But meanwhile, he has a Ferrari. Like he was mentioning, he has a Ferrari or a Cobra. These fancy sports cars that he liked. He bought a lot of watches. He liked to buy watches, had all these expensive, like $3,000 watches, whatever. He had one watch that was worth like $900,000 or something, he said. But anyway, his son, who was born in 1977, I think, ended up in high school, ended up smoking pot, so forth, and Mort was all worried about his pot smoking. His friend said, "Oh, don't worry about that. Everybody smokes pot, and it'll be fine." Ultimately, it was not fine, and Mort Jr. became a heroin addict, and to the worst results of all that, and died at age 19 of an OD. So that's a tragedy. That's his only child. So having kids, what a crapshoot. I don't have any kids. So yeah, so he's where so he got married a third time when he was quite old. He ended up keeping going. He had some 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 TV shows that would come and go, and he did radio for a while. Had a Washington D.C. drive time radio show he was doing, evening drive time. So he would do stuff like that. So yeah, I don't understand show business, how it can all be can keep going like it does. And he had all these friends, like weird friends, and things that fell out with people. Like he was friends with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. They would come to his shows. A lot of these people would come to his shows, and they quite liked his shows. He ultimately had a falling out with those two, with Paul, when he wanted Paul to. There was some controversy with actors' equity in New York, because he failed in a production of a play. He was going to be in a Broadway play, a play written by Lorraine Hansberry about this Jewish guy. And he was going to play the guy, and the play wasn't really ready. Hansberry was dying of prostate cancer and couldn't really work on it anymore. He was not an actor. He didn't really know how to throw himself into the discipline of acting. He was an improvisational a performer on stage, saying his own words. He liked that. So he did a couple of movies, or a few movies and TV shows. Actually, I've watched a couple of these things while I was reading the book. There was a show called Thriller in the early '60s, an hour-long anthology series hosted by Boris Karloff. And I remember watching that show when it was first on, and I found the episode where he's on it and watched that. It was kind of an interesting story, but he's not a very good actor, unfortunately. And it's weird, because we don't really see that much of people who are not really good at being actors, and it really kind of stands out when they do. He was, and then last night actually I watched a movie called Don't Make Waves, a Tony Curtis comedy. It was actually not that bad. Tony Curtis, Claudia Cardinelli, and Sharon Tate is in that one. It's sort of an adult kind of comedy beach movie, with Sharon Tate being this, gorgeous, lovely bikini-clad girl, Malibu, who is a skydiver and also bounces for a lot of time on a trampoline. And we have lots of nice slow-motion shots of Sharon Tate in her bikini, bouncing on the trampoline. But yeah, it was a pretty good movie. He plays kind of a realtor or something, or somebody that sort of gives him a house, and he's just in one scene. So anyway, I watched that. It was kind of a cool movie. At the end, there's this big mudslide. It's set in L.A., and there's this big rain mudslide scene where the house that they're in starts sliding off a hill, and trips over and flips over and all that. So it was pretty good. And Tony Curtis is a pretty good actor. He's kind of funny. It was directed by the same guy that directed Sweet Smell of Success, oddly enough, a whole different type of movie. So yeah, Mort Sahl just sort of carries on his various TV shows. Friends with a lot of people like Dick Cavett, and Woody Allen, and Mark Russell, and Woody Allen contributed to the book, who was interviewed, because Mort Sahl changed the direction of comedy, and actually Woody Allen says, he saw what he was doing, and Woody Allen was just a comedy writer at the beginning, and Actually, Mort Sahl, in his casual style, gave Woody Allen the courage to become a stand-up comic. Woody Allen started as a stand-up comic, started as a performer, as a stand-up comic, and then it went from that into the movies and all that, and the rest is history of tons of movies and scandal, and now he's another old man. So Elaine May is in it. Elaine May directed a play, show he was in, or maybe she did, or maybe she didn't. I don't know. Maybe it fell apart. It's interesting how, how conservative the culture is, but it will tolerate some sort of clowns on the edge of things that criticize it. Friendships. He was a friend with Ronald Reagan. I mean, how can you see, when you get to be friends with these people, how, he did continue to criticize Ronald Reagan with jokes and so forth, but, it's like, yeah, I'm sure these people are nice and great to be friends with them, but then when it comes down to it, what they do ultimately is so, kind of toxic that you really want to be friends with them. He was friends with Nancy Reagan, and actually there's a part where the son needs a particular rehab, and he asked Nancy Reagan if she could intervene to get him put in the head of the list. There was a long waiting list to get in this place, and he wanted Nancy to help in getting him shoved up ahead in the list, and Nancy didn't, and so he said, well, I guess it's okay to just say no, which was the slogan that Nancy Reagan, just don't say no to drugs or whatever. So, yeah, it's a good book. I enjoyed reading the book. There's another book of his that was written by Mort Sahl called Heartland. It is not in the New York Public Library system that I could find, and it was not on Audible, so I didn't buy an old copy of it or anything, and I'd be interested to read it. Dave Emery talks about Heartland a good deal. I listened to a sort of conspiracy podcaster, very old guy my age who's been doing it for like 50 years or whatever, Dave Emery, and he is talked about Heartland, the book that Mort Sahl made in reference to the Kennedy assassination and so forth. So maybe I'll look for that and find it sometime and read that too. So yeah, I guess that's about all I got to say about Mort Sahl. There's some photos in here. I'll probably put some photos in behind me so you get a look at what he looked like. There's some photos in the book, and he was quite a fan of Adlai Stevenson, actually. Adlai Stevenson, who ran for president against Eisenhower, and he was really a Stevenson fan. But all these people are gone now, and all their people are dead, and he's dead too. And I'm going to be pretty soon, before too long, and it all will continue to go on. And somebody in the future will go, this guy's got a video on YouTube about Mort Sahl. Who the hell is Mort Sahl? So you can watch the video. Hello, future people. And you can learn about what I think about Mort Sahl, which is going to get you a $10 cup of coffee, I guess, in whatever era you're living in. And I guess that's about all I have to say about it. So thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Last Man Standing by Mort Sahl. There's a lot of Mort Sahl on YouTube, so you can look at him and see if you like that stuff or not. Okay? And we'll talk to you next time.